Hello, Jeff. I don't have any cool rituals at the beginning of my show like you do. So I'm going to have you kick this interview off the same way you kick off all of yours, because I think it's a great way to start every conversation.
Absolutely. And John, thanks for having me. So to start out, we're going to do 3 power breaths in. If you're listening to the podcast, you can do the same thing as long as you're not driving, right? We're going to breathe in through the belly, up through the chest, and then we're going to raise our hands up above our head. So let's go ahead and breathe in and out. Good. Another breath in and out. Final breath in and out. All right. Now I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1. When I get to 1, we're going to yell boom at the top of our lungs. We're going to pound our chest again. If you're listening to this, you can do the same thing. And it's just so vital to change your state. So in 3, 2, 1, and boom. There you go. There you go.
I love it. The deep breathing is something that I don't do enough of. And I constantly find myself trying to remember to belly breathe because I'm a pretty natural short breather. Do you know why people normally do that? Is it just because people are busy, or?
It's just people are used to doing it that way. Right. And I've read the Oxygen Advantage, which talks about belly breathing, nasal breathing. I actually just got the book Breathe to read on my vacation next week, because there's so much power in breath, right? And breathing through your nose and taking those belly breaths, and we over breathe and we breathe short. And it's amazing. I've tried to implement it when I'm doing some long distance running and trying to breathe through that nose. It is difficult, right? So it's just what we're used to, right? So it's amazing when you kind of dive into the science of it, and the Oxygen Advantage kind of connected the dots for me, because it said, hey, if you sleep with your mouth open and you breathe through your mouth, many times you're tired, you don't get a great night's sleep, you wake up kind of lethargic. And I connected, well, my family, my oldest son and I breathe through our noses. We wake up and we're kind of full of energy. My wife and youngest son, they breathe through their mouths and they sleep later, but they always kind of feel like, hey, I'm not refreshed. So there was some correlation there where I was like, wait a second, let me see what my family is. But yeah, breathing, an amazing thing that you can do. It's so automatic, but to change your state, to de-stress, breathing through your nose is one of the most amazing things that you can do.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how just by focusing on your breath, you're able to really control your mood. You're able to control your heart rate. It really controls a lot of things. And it's something that you do so automatically, but I'm going to read this book, and I took a note. I'm going to link to it in the show notes, because I know when I need to calm down, if I just take a deep breath, which we've heard forever, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jeff, for joining me on the podcast. I want to jump right into what you do for a living. So why don't you tell the listeners what Jeff Wickersham does?
Yeah, absolutely, John. So I eat, sleep, and breathe morning habits, rituals, routines, right? And I'll tell you a little backstory so you understand kind of the journey and why I'm here now talking about morning habits and rituals. So I spent about 20 years in corporate America. And then about 6.5 years ago, I had that life event that kind of punched me in the knees, or punched me in the gut, cut me at the knees, where I lost my mom to breast cancer. So it was questioning everything about life, right? You lose the woman that brought you into the world. You watch her take her last breath. You question a lot of things. And one was corporate America having me bound out of bed on fire in the morning? And after some soul searching, the answer was no. So I jumped in and started my own gym locally. And then what organically grew out of that was high performance coaching, right? Because 100 people would fill out a 10-question application through Facebook, but only 15, 20, 25 would actually answer a phone or a text. And it was a pain point. And I knew personally I needed to level up what I was doing at night to prepare for success, and then what I was doing first thing in the morning. So that's where the 4-step methodology, the morning fire methodology, was born. And its mantra, the mantra, my book is Rise, Fight, Love, Repeat. You're rising like a phoenix, reborn each day, new possibilities, new opportunities. You're fighting for physical fitness, mental fitness, nutritional fitness, spiritual fitness. So important to get that dog fight mentality, loving yourself most importantly. Then you can love all those around you. And then that secret sauce, just that repetition over and over again. So it becomes automatic, just like when we were talking about breathing, right? Then you don't need to think about it. It's in your subconscious mind, and it's the true foundation for success. So I guide clients one-on-one, clients in a group setting, men in one of my masterminds, on how to prepare for success at night. What's that last 30 minutes of the day look like? And then what's that first 30 minutes of your day look like? And getting all these quick wins, so you have jet fuel in your veins, and you're ready to attack the day. And anything that happens in life, you're able to handle it and be equipped to move through it.
So you talk about the last 30 minutes and then the first 30 minutes. Is one more important than the other, or do you have to have both of them dialed in?
So I would say the morning is a little bit more important, but so many people miss the back end, right, at night. And I always tell people that is kind of the prep, the planning, right? And you're planning for the next day's success when you get your glass of water out, when you have the phone away from the bed so you're not hitting the snooze button, when you know what kind of clothes you're going to put on right when you wake up so you can go exercise and get some energy going. You can also pre-program what success you're going to have the next day, right? With some affirmations before you go to bed, because the mind kind of stews and thinks about what you feed it at the end of the night. So I feel like the morning's a little bit more important, but I feel like the end of the day is the one that so many people miss, right?
Yep. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's like anything. If you don't have a plan, you're going to have some sort of execution, but it might be crappy execution if you don't think about it ahead of time.
Right. You need to be intentional on, okay, what does my morning look like? And so many people give away that control. And it's why anxiety, depression, stress is at an all-time high, because people do what most of the time? One, they hit the snooze button 3 or 4 times, 8 minutes of sleep here and there. We know that's not quality sleep. It's not helping you in any stretch of the imagination. 2, they're looking at their phone. So they're feeding it their minds with news, social media, things that can take them down that rabbit hole of negativity.
And blue light, a lot of blue light too from the phone, right?
Correct. And you're giving up control. So I love to switch that. And you are taking control the minute the alarm clock goes off. It's your life. You can make these choices. You can choose that amazing path of a day or the crappy path of the day. But that choice is yours. And so many times people don't realize that they have the ability to make that choice.
So your clients, are you typically having like companies come in and hire you for their employees, or is it one-on-one, or what? How do people normally engage with you?
It's really a mix, right? I've done company programs where I've had a subset of employees go through my 10-week coaching program so they can really have a true work-life balance, right? I was in corporate America. I heard a lot about true work-life balance. I didn't get any kind of blueprint of what it looked like. Everybody liked to talk about it, but there wasn't really a true blueprint of what that would look like. And then there's one-on-one clients. And then I have, some group coaching clients that I bring in a small group fashion as well.
And how long will a typical client engage with you? Can they come in and they sit down with you and you help them craft the plan and then they go execute it, or are they seeing you on a recurring basis? How does that normally work?
So it's on a recurring basis. So all of my programs are 10 weeks in length. And the reason why it's 10 weeks in length is because we've all heard that habits take 21 days to form. Well, that's the bare minimum it can take to actually build a habit. And that's why so many people are unsuccessful in building habits. 80% of people fail by the 3rd week of January on their New Year's resolutions. One, because they don't understand the science of it, right? They think, 21 days, I've made it. Well, many times 21 days, that old habit, that old neural network, they've done brain scans of it, is right equal to that new habit. So that old habit is going to fight like heck to stay there. And that's why so many people fail. So science has shown that habits are formed anywhere from 21 to 67 days. Wow. So it can be 3 times that 21-day threshold if it happens, depending on the person, how frequent you do things. So that's why I design everything to be 10 weeks to hit 70 days and get over that threshold. So they're long lasting, right? These are habits and rituals that I want to be lifelong for folks.
It's funny. I had not heard the 21-day thing. I didn't realize that they actually can scan your brain and see the neural networks, and you're truly reprogramming your brain. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing how science has evolved, and again, making sense of it all. Now it makes a lot of sense why 80% of people fail, right? They've been set up for failure. They have this expectation, so it's 21 days. They feel this rush. Oh, I've made it. And then they go right back to the old habit because they haven't really figured out, they don't have an awareness, they don't understand the science. And that's the first step in trying to achieve anything that you want to achieve. You got to understand, hey, how are our minds dictating or wired or set up so you can be prepared, again, to your point, preparing the night before, prepared for success.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've taken on 2 new, I don't know if you'd call them habits, but I started learning Spanish. I'm doing 3 classes per day. My wife is a native Spanish speaker. And it's been interesting just seeing my progress. I've been doing it for about 3 weeks now, and it's definitely interesting to see, like, okay, I don't really understand this at all, but I'm thinking of new things in new ways and reprogramming my brain. So hopefully I'm about 21 days in, hopefully it'll start getting a little bit better. But the other new thing that I started around the same time is transcendental meditation.
Okay.
And I can definitely see that I can definitely see that it's becoming just part of my routine. Every morning and right before dinner, every day at night, I go do it, and I'm starting to feel it as just, it's part of my day. It's no longer something that I have to really like force myself to do. It's just natural.
Yeah, and that's amazing. Kudos to you for the language and the meditation piece. I'm a huge fan of meditation. Just the other day I hit 1,300 straight days of at least 10 minutes of meditation.
Wow.
Which is 3 years and 205 days. So I've been doing it, but again, you feel it.
Yep.
It brings peace to the chaos that is the world, right? I mean, so many thoughts, we're bombarded by how many different bits and pieces of information. It's amazing to just spend 10 minutes breathing, focusing on your breath, right? The temperature of the air coming in through your nose, out your nose, and just clearing your mind every day. So it's one of the things that I tell people, no matter where you're at, traveling for work, vacation, somewhere, you can always get a glass of water. You can always exercise a bit. And you can always meditate. And those are 3 things that no matter where I'm at, I just continue to do.
I think that's great advice. So I mentioned earlier that I appeared on your podcast. Obviously you host a podcast. Why don't you tell the folks what the podcast is all about and how it kind of complements the work that you're doing, your book, that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the podcast is called Morning Fire for Entrepreneurs, and I'm all about that fire, that enthusiasm, that excitement, that energy that we got going early in the show here. And Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, I have a short snippet personal episode where I give some lesson that I've learned in my life, something I've heard, just something to move the needle a little bit, because I find so many times people are just slightly off. Right? You're not so off in where your direction is. You're just slightly off. So moving the needle for them. And then as I interviewed you on the podcast, I interview a successful entrepreneur here or there, go to Morning Habit Ritual, as well as their journey story, any lessons that they've learned, to be able to share those with my community, because so many times we hear and see the highlight reels of people's successes, and it is just not a straight line upward, right? There's a lot of bumps. There's a lot of failures. There's a lot of lessons learned. And that's what I look to show and give to the listeners.
Awesome. So, how long ago did you start the podcast?
That has been 2.5 years. 2.5 years I've been doing the podcast. I started out with a full year, 365 days of just me talking episodes. So that was a challenge. I remember when I started the podcast, my wife had sent me a text and asked, did someone steal our Amazon card? Because I had gotten the arm, the microphone, the noise canceller. I said, no, I'm starting a podcast. And she said, you're doing what? I said, I'm starting a podcast. So that was it.
That's funny. If you look through my Amazon history, you can see as things got more and more advanced, because it's like anything, like learning anything, right? You start off, you don't really know what you need, so you go buy something, and then you're like, oh, I could tweak this, get a slightly better microphone, better headphones, better webcam, So I definitely know that feeling, and the Amazon card workout that you get as you build out the studio.
Yep, absolutely. And that's just always, that's being in that mindset of always getting better, right? And I think that's so critical to any sustained success that you want in life. It's just that mentality of, hey, today I'm going to get better than I was yesterday.
Yep. No, I love having something that I suck at because I know I can get better at it. If it's something that I can actually improve. Something like golf will never improve for me. but things like learning a new language or learning a fighting skill or a new form of exercise, I'm always on the hunt for those because I think that it just gives me a sense of purpose going out and learning. I mean, that's really for me what the purpose of life is, right? Is to learn as much as you can and to enjoy the time that you've got here.
Absolutely. And I would say from a podcast perspective, one of the greatest gifts I got through running the podcast, hosting the podcast, was I sucked at the beginning, right? I mean, I listened to the first couple episodes. I was like, wow, there was no energy. I didn't have my voice yet. But after I'm probably over 800 episodes now at this point, the way I speak, now I do public speaking with companies and go in and deliver my message. It has totally changed how I have a voice now. So I would, anybody listening that says, well, I need to improve my public speaking, I need to do this, need to do that. Podcast is a great way because it's just your voice. You can do it. It's easy to set up and then you're going to practice. And as you get those repetitions in, you're going to get better as you go along.
Absolutely. I think editing your own audio is the number one thing you can do to improve your ability to hold an intelligent conversation, because you hear things and you're like, why do I say that? Or why do I do that? Or why do I have that tick?
It is. And it can be incredibly painful when you're listening to yourself and you're like, ooh, why did I say that? Or I need to re-record that. But it's, if you don't take stock in it, if you don't review, if you don't say, okay, what did I do well? What can I get better at? You're just going to stay in that same place.
Yep. So what has surprised you the most that you've learned from the podcast? I know that's a broad question, but is there any one thing that kind of sticks out in your mind?
Our minds make things up to be more difficult than they are. Right. And this happened with my podcast. This happened when I built my online course, where the mind makes this huge mountain out of what you're going to do. And it many times tells you, you can't do that, or that's so much work. Who are you to do this? And it's wired that way. Our minds are wired to keep us safe and certain. So anytime we get out of that threshold of safety and certainty, that's where fear kicks in. Right. And we've evolved as a human species, but our minds haven't. That's why they call it a caveman brain, right? Where our minds sense fear. It was back in the day, a saber-toothed tiger was ready to kill us. Well, obviously many, many times you're not in fear of imminent death, but fear still kicks in. That trigger still kicks in. And that causes so many people to stop. But if you just take action, if you flip fear and use it as a trigger to go, it's incredibly powerful. And the podcast, the course, once I get into it, you get a couple of repetitions, you're like, I can't believe that it is this easy. Yeah. And so that would definitely be a lesson that I've learned a couple of times in my journey, is so many times the mind makes it up to be so much more difficult than it is. When you get in, many times you say, why didn't I do this 2 months ago? So if you can flip that fear to be a trigger to go rather than a trigger to stop, it's incredibly powerful.
Nike got it right after all. Just do it.
That's it. When you take action, all of a sudden you feel momentum, and then you get more motivation, right? It's that loop. And so many times people think they need motivation to move. And I just say, no, just do. Yep. Because once you start that action process, well, you get some movement, you get momentum, motivation builds, I can do more. So it's action is the key component.
And it can snowball in either direction. If you stop acting, it gets harder and harder, and you have the momentum moving in the wrong direction. So I think that's
right.
Advice.
Yeah. Because then you feel bad about yourself, and we're the only human species that continues to beat ourselves up for the things we didn't do yesterday, 2 months ago, 2 years ago. So it can definitely spiral in the opposite direction as well.
So what do you think most people get wrong in their morning routines?
not having a routine at all. Right. And not doing things that light them up physically, mentally, spiritually. Right. And you have an opportunity right when the day breaks for you, whenever you get up. I get up typically during the work week at 4 a.m. I say to people, you don't need to do that. If you're getting up at 7, get up at 6:30, or your kids get up at 6:30, get up at 6. Give yourself some time to get quick wins in. And that's so incredibly powerful, because you're basically setting the tone for the rest of the day by what you do that first 30 minutes. So imagine getting a glass of water, meditating, exercising, journaling, writing notes to your kids. In a half an hour, you feel already this overwhelming sense of accomplishment. And then that's going to trickle down to the rest of your day. So letting your day control you, not taking control that's the major issue. And planning out to get those quick wins is incredibly powerful. And I urge any of your listeners to start that process. It can be as easy as just drinking a glass of water and going for a walk for 10 minutes, getting outside a little bit. Our bodies are meant to move around. You'll get more natural energy than you ever would from a glass of caffeinated coffee.
Yep. No, it's interesting, and getting out and seeing the sunlight and just the circadian clock, setting your circadian clock. I think that's very useful to just to get outside, just to see the sun is so helpful to setting the tone for the rest of the day.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And getting out in nature, breathing the fresh air, that's incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. So how long did it take you? You mentioned your mother's death was kind of the event that got you reflecting on things. How long would you say that you reflected before you started the transition to this new life? And maybe walk us through how you made the transition from the corporate life to being an entrepreneur and working with other entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I would say it was a couple months after where I really started questioning, hey, was this working? Fortunately for me, about 8 months later, I was told, hey, you either need to relocate to New York City or Arizona. I'm outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 2 sons that are in sports. That wasn't happening. So that was the other trigger to say, okay, I'm making a change. I've got a clock ticking. I'm going to figure this out and go from there. Went out on my own, and that is a vast ocean to jump into if you've never owned a business and operated a business. And quite honestly, that first gym business I consider a pretty big failure. But what led out of that was lessons learned, right? And I think failures are such an opportunity to learn, and we learn more from failures than we do really from wins. So took me a couple years as I opened up the gym to really understand that I needed to have better habits, better rituals, a morning routine, because I was still operating in kind of the corporate mindset, the corporate life where, I was hanging out late with my neighbors, drinking beer till 2 a.m, doing things that aren't really conducive to setting up a life on fire and a life for success. So probably after my mom passed, it was 3 years before I started experimenting, taking bits and pieces from coaches, podcasts, books, you name it, putting it together. And then when it was working for me, shortly after, piloting it with a group of friends, colleagues, whoever it was, saying, hey, I've got something here. I'd love to have you go through it. And the people that actually put in the effort saw tremendous results. I mean, I had a guy that I've known since he was 5 years old. We went to elementary school together, played football. He's a linebacker, fullback. I'm a beast, but he suffered from crippling anxiety to the point where he told me a story where his neighbor was shoveling their driveway and he knew he needed to go out and help him and he couldn't do it. He went through my 10-week process, and the change in him, he was talking in the exercise classes. He was more vocal, and he wrote me this note just saying he has 3 kids, just saying he's now the father that they deserve, and thank you. And
oh, wow.
It was that experience with him, since I knew him for so many years, absolutely 100% confirmed this works, and this can just open up untapped potential in people.
Yeah, I agree. And to me, that's the kind of that feeling that you got from taking him through that transformation. For me, that's why I prefer to be out on my own rather than working in corporate America, because in corporate America, a lot of times the work that you're doing is very repetitive and not that meaningful to where you're actually able to make that profound of a change in somebody's life, and whatever it may be. In your case, it's improving other humans, but whatever it is that you're doing. My experience has been, and that's what has drawn me to being out on my own, is the ability to do things that are meaningful for my clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And to make a difference in somebody else's life, right? Bring that positivity, that hope, that energy, and to guide. And I kind of shy away from the word coach. I always love the word guide now, because there's so many coaches out there now, but I'm here to guide you. You can pick and choose what you want. I want you to put on that white lab coat, become a scientist, and play around, figure out what works, what doesn't. But when they get through the process, when they feel that they have just made such a shift in their world that's impacted them from a professional perspective, it's impacted them from a personal perspective, it's just so incredibly fulfilling.
Oh, I can imagine. How much commonality would you say there is between the routines that you end up helping people implement? Is there like 50% of it is reusable and applies to everybody, and the rest is idiosyncratic to them, or is it different for every person?
The majority of it is repeatable for everybody. So I always say I have the blueprint. You can tweak it here and there, but this works, and it has for the men this year in the mastermind I'm running. It has for men and women that have gone through my 10-week program. It has for the corporate clients that I've coached as well. There's minor tweaks here and there, but for the majority of it, it's absolutely the entire scope, and it's easily adoptable. And so many people come back when they start it. One, they get addicted to it real quick because they feel this energy, they feel this focus, and it's so counterintuitive. I always tell people you're going to get more time in your day, and they're like, how am I going to get more time if I'm spending 30 minutes on myself and 30 minutes in the evening? I said, because you're going to be so much more focused. The BS you deal with now isn't going to matter. You're going to be actually driven. You're going to be lit up. You're going to feel good because you did some exercise. You're going to feel great mentally because you've meditated. So you actually get more time in your day, and it's simple, and it's straightforward. And so many people say, I can't believe how easy this is. It's not, yes, I have to do the work, but it's pretty simple and straightforward.
So just to jump into the weeds a little bit, how important do you rank breakfast because everybody talks about the most important meal of the day, but then there's obviously this intermittent fasting movement. What are you telling your clients about breakfast and the role that it plays in having a good day?
So I've shifted a little bit on that fact. I was doing a green smoothie typically when I was waking up, but if I'm waking up at 4 a.m., I'm not giving my digestive system a lot of time to break and kind of recover. So I have done a little bit more intermittent fasting lately. And now I give the recommendation, if you're hungry, eat. If you're not hungry, don't eat, right? Again, we so many times we're pushed information that we need to eat breakfast. We need to eat 3 square meals. No, if you're hungry, eat. If you're not hungry, don't eat. And I feel like that's just tremendous advice to have people actually connect the mind with the body.
Yes.
And hey, I'm not hungry, I'm not going to eat. Right. And I've got 2 sons, one's soon to going to be 13, one's going to be 11. And I used to say, hey, you got to eat breakfast, but I've changed that. And that's again, being in that mindset of constantly evolving. And now hey, if you're not going to eat breakfast, hey, you're not hungry, don't eat breakfast, right? Yeah. You'll fill it out. So that's kind of my stance on breakfast. Although I do love breakfast. I might not eat it at 9, but I'm having my 5-egg omelet with spinach, mushrooms, and feta cheese at 10:30, 11.
Yeah,
and
you're still breaking the fast. You're just
correct. It's just later in the day, and I'm giving my body and my digestive system time to recover. And we overfeed. We're constantly grazing, and that's why, hey, 72% of Americans, adult Americans, are either overweight or obese.
the most interesting thing to me, as I've experimented with different durations of fasting, is just having the metabolic flexibility to just to burn fat. Burn fat as an energy source, as opposed to blood glucose, has all sorts of interesting benefits. If I get on an airplane, if I'm flying to London, for instance, and they don't have good food on it, it doesn't bother me that I'm not eating. Whereas in the past, I might have been so hungry that I just ate the crap food that was there. So I think having that metabolic flexibility is of a huge value to people. And I'm glad to see so many people taking intermittent fasting so seriously, because I do think that it for me personally, it makes a huge difference in my mood and my brain when I'm not dependent on, I need the meal right now. People who fast don't get hangry, right? It's just not even a thing. You don't even think about it, right? Like you being able to control the hunger is so huge for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it.
So, do you appear on a lot of podcasts? I'm guessing that you do.
I do. Obviously, many times I'll interview someone on my podcast and they invite me on. I do have my assistant doing some reach outs to be on other podcasts, because I have a message, I have a story. I'm on a mission to impact 1 million mornings. I've got the number drawn down there. I keep track of it. So, that's part of the legacy that I want to leave. And that was one of the last deep conversations I had with my mother. Was she was always concerned with her legacy. She's got 7 grandchildren. She wanted them to remember her. I told her they're going to remember you through my passion, my energy, and my sons are going to remember you as well. So that's I love just getting out talking, and podcasting is just such a great way to get information, take action on it, right? I listen to podcasts if I'm cutting the grass or going for a run, something of that nature. It's an incredible tool that we now have at our disposal to be able to get so much information. And then you need to take the next step and take action, like we talked about before, on that information.
So this is just out of personal curiosity. I find that I go through periods of time when I've got a bunch of books on tape or books on tape, but digital, Audible books. And I find myself at times I'll go like a month where all I listen to is a handful of books. And then I'll get into a groove where, now I need to go catch up on all my favorite podcasts. How do you try to balance what you're putting into your mind?
Yeah, I would say I'm probably in the same boat where I'm reading a book every month, sometimes a couple a month. When I'm in my truck, I'm listening to podcasts typically. So if I'm driving anywhere, that's where I get caught up on the podcasts. If I'm cooking my breakfast, I'll usually have the headphones on and a YouTube video on with some inspiration, maybe in the shower. And those are just, I feel like, areas of opportunity to get better. Right. And since we have information, we have knowledge at our fingertips, Audible, YouTube, podcasts, take those opportunities to listen, to get better. The excuse that you don't have time, that's all it is it's an excuse. You have pockets of time where you can fill your mind, and it's so incredibly powerful, especially in the morning, to listen to motivation, listen to an inspirational story, to music. That's why I do listen to YouTube as well in the morning when I'm working out. And it fills you with that energy, that enthusiasm, and you can really move forward from there.
That's awesome. So how do you compare doing your own podcast versus appearing on other ones? Do you prefer one over the other? How do they complement each other?
I enjoy both. I would say when I appear on somebody's podcast, I feel like the pressure's off of me, because I can just answer any questions. I remember a year ago I had on my podcast Evan Carmichael. I don't know if you know Evan Carmichael, but he's got like 3 million subscribers on YouTube.
Oh wow!
I mean, he's connected. He's going out to out west somewhere in August to a retreat with Brendan Bouchard, Mel Robbins, Dean Gracio. I mean, all the Lewis Howes, all the A players from a personal development perspective. So I was so incredibly nervous when I interviewed him. I'm actually getting him back on the podcast here soon because we've stayed connected. So I would definitely say appearing is a lot easier. I feel like when you're the host, you've got to have those questions and have everything buttoned up. But hey, that raises your game as well, because pressure isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah. No, I go back and forth between which one I like better. I like my own because I learn so much more from it because I get to kind of craft the narrative, but I probably enjoy it more when I'm on somebody else's. And especially now I can appreciate people who are better at it, and know the prep work that goes into it and see the way they operate. And I loved appearing on yours. I like, you've got a lot more formality and kind of, you've got things that are just like part of the show. And I think that's really interesting. Mine's always been a bit more of kind of fly from the hip, but I always like appearing on other people's podcasts and just seeing how they do things differently.
Yeah. One of the things I love about hosting my own show is I still do my own editing, and then being able to listen back to the episode. I'll pick up like we were talking about the human charger. You brought that up, and Evan was talking on a Zoom the other day I was on, and I pinged him and said, hey, you should get the human charger to help with jet lag. Right. So, you can pick up and that's another piece I'll just say to the listeners, go back and read books twice. Go back and listen to something over and over again, because depending on where you're at in life, where your mindset's at, you're going to pick up different value that you might not have seen before. So that's incredibly important as well.
It's interesting. I'm nodding my head as you say that. I just rewatched Breaking Bad for the first time, and I didn't realize how much I didn't pick up the first time watching it that I picked up later after watching. And I saw the same thing with Sopranos. I went back and watched it a few years ago, and it's great advice on any content to revisit it.
Yeah, absolutely.
How so you've talked a lot about how you like to get content and consume it and create it. How do you compare, say, reading newspapers or magazines with books and podcasts?
I really make an effort to stay away from the news and the negativity. So there's a negativity principle where anything negative or even perceived as negative is amplified 8, 9, maybe 10 times more in the brain. Again, it's back to that fight or flight. We're in the cave, there's a saber-toothed tiger, there's danger. So anything negative, our mind amps it up. So imagine reading the newspaper first thing in the morning and hearing about COVID or somebody shot, or it can take you down that negative rabbit hole. And I'll never forget the example where it connected with me. My wife went out with her girlfriends, out on the town one night. She came home and I said, how was your night? And she said, oh, it was fantastic. But one person said something negative about me and I couldn't get past it. And that was the negativity principle. And I've had it play in my mind where back when I had my gym, I started doing affirmations at the end of class. So I'd shut off the lights. It'd be dark. We'd be screaming. Everybody be into it. I had women in tears because they're saying I'm a warrior, and going crazy. And I had one person come up and say, that's just really not for me. I think that's dumb. And that stuck with me for so long. So think about that the next time. And the news and the magazines and media in general know that. That's why it's all negative. So think about that before you choose that path related to that. Now, I'm not saying I don't pick up a magazine and read it or watch the news every so often, but I definitely make a concerted effort to limit the amount of exposure I get to that type of negativity.
I'm the same way. I gave up on 24-hour news networks a long time ago. And then during COVID, I started watching both CNN and Fox News. And I was like, no wonder I turned this garbage off. It's absolute crap. And the shorter the time frame of the reporting, I think the less accurate things are. That's the other problem with the news, is that they flat out just get things wrong as they're happening. A book or a podcast usually is reflecting on something after it's actually understood and we can kind of place it in the context of what it really meant. You can't get that from a daily newspaper or even a weekly magazine.
No, and I did the same thing, John, when COVID hit, right? I was glued to the TV and I could just feel myself drifting. And I relate that back to when 9/11 happened, right? 9/11 happened. I remember exactly where I was at. I had friends that were in the tower, luckily got out.
Wow.
And I watched the news for like 2 days straight. And I remember my mother telling me, you got to turn this, because I was physically almost getting ill by it. Right. And you just really need to be aware of it and make a concerted effort not to put that into your mind. And that's a very powerful place if you can get there.
Yeah, for me, I mean, 9/11 obviously was a big impact. I think I started watching the news more after 9/11, but when I stopped watching the news, I was living in the DC area, and we had a sniper.
Okay.
There was a sniper. You remember?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I actually visited a gas station 2 days before one of the victims was shot at that same gas station, and I started really watching the news, but everything on the news was wrong. They were saying it's a white guy driving a white van. And it was just, you had all these experts coming, so-called experts, and not one of them was able to profile what he actually was or who he actually was. And I think that was when I became completely just disenfranchised with the news. I was like, you can have a 24-hour news network, but you can't have 24 hours of actual news.
Right. So you've got to sensationalize things. You've got to look for, those negative points to be able to draw people in, because it definitely does. And I stay away from it as much as possible.
So I'm going to let you go here in a few minutes, but I just want to kind of pull a couple threads that I think I'm hearing about your practices. So, and get your perspective on how they all fit together. It sounds like your recommendations are be mindful of what you're eating, pay attention to what you're putting in. We didn't talk much about healthy choices, but we did talk about when you eat and fasting and that sort of thing. It sounds like filling your head with good things rather than negative things. It's planning and prep work. It's exercise and fitness. It's being connected with those around you and spending time with the people that you care about. Am I missing other themes? And can you kind of talk about how they all pull together and what you think are some of the most meaningful short-term changes that you're helping people make along these dimensions?
Yeah, I think you hit a lot of those key points, right? The other, I know we talked about meditation as well, is calming that mind down and finding a quiet space to just breathe, focus on your breath. If you can't do it, there's many meditation apps out there. Calm. I use Insight Timer as my meditation app, but putting all those pieces together, right? Exercise, what you eat. My youngest son has Crohn's disease, so we eat a lot of whole foods. I will tell you that is incredibly powerful when you go away from the processed side of the fence, because that processed food is just crap. They are putting in filler in there. It's making us all sick. So being mindful of your food, exercising, all those pieces to the puzzle allows you to play full out and have a tremendously fulfilled life, right? I'm 46 years old. I'm in better shape now than I've ever been. I ran the David Goggins 4x4x48 race in March, where you run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. I started at 11 p.m. on Friday. I finished at 7 p.m. on Sunday. I've never run a marathon. That's almost 2 marathons in 2 days.
Wow.
I'm doing 100,000 push-ups this year. I'm pushing the envelope, and the way I am able to do that is by those habits and those pieces, right? Setting myself up for success, getting a great night's sleep, waking up, getting these wins, setting goals and attacking them. And too often we're all in on work. We're overweight, but we don't understand why we can't have the energy and the enthusiasm we want to. It's all those pieces together to be your optimal self and to play all out, right? And I have a little saying on my whiteboard right now: live today like it's your last, right? And having that mindset and playing full out, it's truly incredibly powerful. And I think so many people are walking zombies. I feel like it's a world full of walking zombies, okay, with mediocre, good, and average. And do you really want to look back on your life and say, I had a good life, or I had an extraordinary life? And that's a decision you get to choose and make every single day in the morning.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I'm turning 45 next month, and I feel better than I did when I was 25. And I attribute a lot of it to just switching to a whole food diet. Everything for me kind of started falling into place after I went, it was, paleo, I guess, was what most people would call the dietary style. But I think that getting control of your food and then getting control of your information that you're processing. And I think then I was able to change the way I work out, change energy levels, and it just makes everything so much better. And honestly, I feel like with the way where science is going and our understanding of things, that we can feel this way into our 70s and even into our 80s, honestly.
I have a goal. It's to live to be 100. Right. And to play all out. And I've told my sons, I said, you guys are going to you're going to have me around for quite a long time. But, that's, you set that out. And to your point, yeah, I absolutely agree that I was just training my dad today. He's 75 years old and he was in the gym and working out and sweating. And I said, listen, this is how you stay active, you stay healthy. And it's such a key to the overall process.
Awesome. Well, look, Jeff, I really appreciate what you do. I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing the information. I'll make sure to put the book that you mentioned as well as your book and where do people get in touch with you if they want to follow up with you?
Absolutely. So they can find my book, Rise, Fight, Love, Repeat, Ignite Your Morning Fire. It's out on Amazon. So it's available in ebook or paperback. If you want to find the podcast, Morning Fire for Entrepreneurs, it's out on all major podcast providers. YouTube channel, Jeff Wickersham, Morning Fire Coaching. I'll put the podcast out there as well as other content. You can go out to themorningfire.com. If you wanted to grab a complimentary 20-minute session where we talk about your habits and rituals, I fire you up a little bit. You can do that as well. And then I'm out on major social media platforms, Instagrams, Jeff_Wickersham, LinkedIn, Facebook, all that good stuff.
Awesome. Just taking a few notes here. Well, again, thank you so much, Jeff. Really appreciate you sharing your story.
Thanks, John, for having me.
All right. Take care. Cheers.